Luke had spent most of his adult life working quietly on the open land. He was not the kind of man who talked a lot or looked for trouble. People in the nearby town knew him as a steady ranch worker, someone who kept to himself and minded his own business. He lived in a small wooden cabin at the edge of the high desert, where the mountains rose like old giants and the winds carried the smell of pine and dust. Most days were predictable: feeding cattle, mending fences, checking water sources, and riding long distances with only the sound of hooves breaking the silence. But life has a way of changing without warning. One late afternoon, as the sun lowered and turned the sky into soft orange fire, Luke was riding home after checking his herd. The heat of the day had passed, and the cool desert wind brushed against his face. He was thinking about nothing in particular, just enjoying the quiet, when his horse suddenly stopped. The animal sensed something ahead on the ground. Luke narrowed his eyes. There was something lying near the dry creek bed, small, still, and almost hidden by the sand and brush. At first, he thought it might be an old sack or a blanket someone dropped. But when he rode closer, he saw a hand, thin, trembling slightly. His breath caught. Someone was lying there. He jumped off his horse and rushed forward. It was an elderly Apache woman. Her skin was dry from the heat, her dress torn, and her breaths were shallow. Her hair was long and gray, spread out like a faded crown around her. It was clear she had been out there for hours, maybe even a whole day, without water or help. Luke quickly knelt beside her. "Ma'am? Can you hear me?" he asked softly. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. She looked at him with confusion and fear. Settlers and Apache people did not always trust each other in those days, and she had every reason to be afraid. But Luke spoke gently, trying to calm her. "You're hurt. I'm going to get you out of this, son. I won't harm you. You need help." The woman understood only some words, but she felt the kindness in his tone. She nodded weakly, as if giving him permission. Luke wasted no time. He lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she was. She seemed as fragile as a dry branch. He carried her to his horse, keeping one arm around her to support her trembling body. Then he placed her on the saddle and climbed up behind her, holding her steady as he rode toward his cabin as quickly as he could without jostling her too much. The journey took nearly half an hour, and during that time the woman drifted in and out of consciousness. She whispered something in her language, words Luke could not understand. He just answered softly, "You're safe now. Almost home." When he reached his cabin, he helped her inside and laid her on his bed. His cabin was small, but warm and clean. He started a fire, boiled water, and prepared a mixture of warm herbs he used whenever he caught a cold. He offered her small sips, and she drank slowly, as if every swallow brought her back to life. The woman looked around the room, trying to understand where she was and who he was. Luke kept his hands calm and his movements gentle. He spoke softly as he checked her arm for injuries and wrapped a cloth around a small cut on her leg. "You're safe here," he repeated. "Nobody will hurt you." She nodded again. Her eyes were tired, but she was no longer afraid. Luke spent the next few hours taking care of her. He warmed soup, made a clean place for her to rest, and checked her breathing again and again to make sure she was improving. Even though he had worked a long day, he stayed awake through the night, dozing lightly in the chair beside her just in case she needed anything. By morning, the woman's condition had improved. She was still weak, but her eyes were clearer. She looked at Luke as he came to her with a small bowl of warm broth. With shaky hands, she accepted it and drank slowly. After finishing, she placed her hand on her chest and said a word softly, as if introducing herself. Luke tried his best to pronounce it, and she smiled faintly. Most of the day passed quietly. The woman rested while Luke continued caring for his animals, but he returned to the cabin every few minutes to check on her. Each time, she watched him with gentle, grateful eyes. On the second day, she was strong enough to sit up. She touched Luke's arm lightly, trying to tell him something important. She spoke slowly in her language, trying to make him understand. Her face was soft but serious, full of emotion. Luke didn't understand the meaning, but he knew from her tone that she was thanking him. He replied with a warm smile. "I'm glad you're getting better. Anyone would have helped. But that wasn't true. Not everyone would have stopped. Not everyone wanted to get involved with Apache people. Many were afraid. Some were hostile. Luke knew this, but he had never believed in turning away from someone in need. The old woman's eyes softened even more. She folded her hands together in a gesture of deep respect, one Luke recognized as something more meaningful than a simple, "thank you." He felt the weight of her gratitude, something deeper and more serious than he expected. On the third day, she felt strong enough to walk. Luke helped her outside to sit in the sun, where she watched the land with calm, wise eyes. She seemed to know every sound, every scent in the air. She pointed to a mountain far away and spoke softly, trying to tell him where her people lived. That evening, she prepared to leave. She packed the small woven bag she had carried with her and tied her long hair neatly. Luke gave her food for the journey, water, and a soft cloth to cover her shoulders against the wind. Before stepping away, she turned to him and touched her palm to his chest gently, over his heart. Then, she said a phrase in Apache, the same one she whispered when he found her. Luke didn't know what it meant, but he felt the weight of the moment. It touched something inside him. She smiled at him with deep gratitude and walked away slowly into the fading light. Luke followed her with his eyes until she disappeared behind the ridge. For days after she left, Luke wondered how she was doing. He hoped she reached her people safely. Sometimes, he caught himself thinking about the words she had said to him, wondering what they meant. But life on the ranch kept him busy, and the weeks passed. Some townsfolk eventually heard about what he had done. A few men at the saloon said he was crazy for helping an Apache, but Luke ignored their talk. He had no regrets. He had seen a woman close to death, and he had helped her. As far as he was concerned, that was the end of the story. But life had other plans he could never have imagined. Because months later, when he least expected it, a young Apache woman appeared at his cabin door. And she carried a message that would turn Luke's quiet life upside down. She carried the old woman's words Luke had not understood at the time. Words that would change everything. The morning was quiet, like any other day on Luke's ranch. The sun had just come over the hills, turning the sky pale gold. Luke had finished checking the horses and was walking toward the cabin with a bucket of water when he froze in his steps. Someone was standing near his door. At first, he thought it might be a traveler or one of the ranch hands from a nearby homestead. But as he came closer, he saw it was a young Apache woman. She stood tall and straight, with long black hair braided neatly over her shoulder. Her clothes were simple but carefully made, decorated with small beads that shone softly in the light. She didn't look frightened or lost. She looked like someone who had come with purpose. Luke tightened his grip on the bucket but kept his voice calm. "Morning," he said carefully. The woman didn't answer right away. She watched him with steady eyes, as if studying the kind of man he was before speaking. Finally, she lifted her chin slightly and said, in clear English, "I am Tala." The name struck something in Luke's memory. The old woman he had rescued had spoken a word that sounded a little like that. He shook the thought away, unsure. Luke nodded politely. "Can I help you, miss?" Tala reached into the small woven bag she carried and pulled out something wrapped in buckskin. She walked forward and placed it gently in Luke's hands. When he opened it, he saw a beautifully carved wooden pendant. The shape was that of a hawk with its wings spread. It looked handmade, old, polished by many years of careful hands. "My mother gave this to you," she said softly. She is the woman you saved. Luke's breath caught. So this was the connection. This young woman was the daughter of the old woman he had rescued. He looked at the pendant again, stunned by its detail and the meaning behind it. How is she? He asked quickly. She got home safely? Tala gave a small nod. She is alive because of you. There was emotion in her voice, respect, gratitude, and something deeper. Luke felt a wave of relief. He had often wondered what became of the woman, hoping she reached her people. Now he knew she had. But before he could say more, Tala spoke again, this time in a voice that carried a weight he didn't understand yet. My mother sent me here. She said you saved her life. In our way, that is not a small thing. Luke didn't understand the full meaning. But the seriousness in her eyes made him feel like he was standing in the middle of something much bigger than he expected. You didn't have to come all this way, he said kindly. Helping her was the right thing to do. I don't need anything in return. Tala looked at him for a long moment, as if deciding how to explain something sacred. Then she said the words that made Luke's heart stop for a moment. My mother said that a life saved must be honored with loyalty. She said I must come to you because a promise was made. Luke blinked. A promise? What promise? She stepped closer, her face sincere, no sign of hesitation. She said, you are now tied to us. She said, I belong with you. Luke's pulse jumped. He didn't know what to say. Her words were calm, steady, and she didn't look embarrassed or confused. She said it as if stating a natural truth. Now I'm yours, she added softly, repeating the same phrase her mother had whispered. Luke felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. He wanted to be respectful, but this was far beyond anything he understood. He held up his hands gently. Miss Tala, I think there's been some misunderstanding. I helped your mother because anyone would. You don't owe me anything. You don't have to stay here. Her expression didn't change. If anything, she stood even straighter. My mother is wise, Tala said. She saw into your heart. She believes you are a man of honor. When she returned, she said I would be safe with you. She said you would protect me. Luke ran a hand through his hair, unsure of how to respond. He didn't want to offend her or disrespect the customs of her people, but he also didn't want her to think she was bound to him in any way. You don't have to stay here just because of something your mother said, he told her gently. This isn't a debt. You're free to go anywhere you want. For the first time, Tala looked slightly surprised, not upset, but curious. You think I am here because I must be, she said slowly, but I am here because I choose to be. Her calm certainty stunned him again. Luke wasn't used to sudden company. His life had been quiet and solitary for years. The idea that someone had come all the way to his cabin, someone with strong traditions and deep family loyalty, made the air feel different, heavier, yet somehow warmer. He finally found his voice. At least let me get you water, he said softly. Tala followed him to the cabin. She stepped inside and looked around with interest. Her eyes traced the wooden shelves, the blankets, the tools on the walls. She showed no fear, no hesitation. She had come prepared. As she drank, she began to explain her journey. Her tribe lived beyond the mountains, several days' travel from Luke's cabin. When her mother returned, weak but alive, she told the story of the cowboy who found her near death and refused to leave her behind. She spoke of his kindness, his patience, and how he stayed awake through a whole night just to keep her safe. Tala had listened to her mother's words, and something inside her had stirred. Honor was important to her people, but this was more than honor. Her mother believed Luke had been chosen to cross paths with them for a reason. Luke listened quietly, moved but unsure. You don't owe me anything, he repeated softly. She met his eyes with quiet strength. In our way, when a man saves a life, he becomes part of the family. My mother said I should repay the balance with my presence, my help, my loyalty. Luke's heart twisted. He didn't want her serving him or feeling bound to him. He wanted her to have freedom. You don't need to serve me, he said. I don't want that. Tala tilted her head slightly, as if studying a puzzle. You think I came to serve? I came to stand with you. I steen. Her tone was so clear, so sincere, that Luke felt the world tilt slightly. He didn't know how to respond. Her presence in his small cabin filled the space with something new, something warm, steady, and unfamiliar. The day passed with a quiet rhythm. Tala helped him without being asked. She carried water, swept the floor, and even mended a tear in one of his blankets with quick, skilled hands. She didn't act like a guest or a servant, she acted like someone who had decided she belonged there. Luke watched her with growing unease mixed with admiration. She was strong, gentle, and confident in her purpose. He respected her, but he still didn't know what her mother's words truly meant. In the late afternoon, as the sun started to lower, Luke finally asked, "What did your mother say? Exactly?" Tala looked at him with soft eyes. She said you saved her life. She said I must honor you. And she said fate has tied us. She said you would understand. In time. Luke swallowed hard. He didn't understand, not yet. But he felt the truth in Tala's calm voice. Something bigger than chance had brought her to his doorstep. As night fell, Tala sat near the fire, her face touched by its warm glow. Luke sat across from her. The silence comfortable, but full of questions. Her mother had whispered the words to him, "Now I'm yours." And now, Tala had come months later, repeating the same words, but with a different meaning in her eyes. Luke didn't know where this path was leading, but the quiet certainty in Tala's gaze told him one thing: his life was never going to be the same. The next morning arrived quietly, but Luke felt the air in his cabin had changed. Tala was no longer just a visitor. Her presence had settled into the space in a natural, steady way, as if she had always belonged there. When Luke stepped outside to start the day, he saw her already awake, standing near the corral and watching the horses with calm eyes. She turned when she heard him, her expression soft and respectful. "Your horses are strong," she said. "They trust you." Luke smiled lightly. Tala nodded, her braid moving gently with the breeze. "My people say a horse sees the real heart of a man before another person ever can." Luke didn't know if that was true. But the horses had always been the only ones he talked to during long, lonely weeks. Maybe they did understand him better than most humans did. He walked toward the barn, expecting Tala to go inside the cabin or sit by the fire. Instead, she followed him with steady steps. When he reached for a saddle, she quietly took the blanket and helped him place it on the horse's back. "You don't have to," Luke began. Tala shook her head softly. "I am not here to sit and watch you work." There was no stubbornness in her tone, only calm truth. Luke hesitated, but something in her firm, peaceful manner made him step back and let her continue. She handled the saddle with surprising skill. She knew where the straps went, how to tighten them, how to stand so the horse did not feel crowded. "You work with horses too?" he asked. "My brother teaches the young ones in our band," she answered. "He says patience is more powerful than strength." Luke's lips curved in a quiet smile. "Your brother sounds like a wise man." Tala nodded once. "He taught me many things." The morning passed with Luke working slowly and Tala staying close. When he went to check a fence line, she walked beside him. Noticing small signs on the ground that Luke overlooked faint tracks of deer, a broken twig that pointed toward where a storm had pushed through, and even the shallow print of a coyote paw near the edge of the gully. "You see things I miss," he admitted. "You see things I miss too," she replied gently. When noon came, they returned to the cabin, the fire crackling softly in the background. After a few minutes, Tala spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "My mother told me about the night you stayed awake beside her. She said she saw the way you kept the fire bright so she would not be cold. Luke looked down, embarrassed. Anyone would have done that. No, Tala said softly. Not anyone. Her certainty made him fall silent. Later in the afternoon, Luke took her to the small stream that ran behind his land. The sky was high and blue, the water cool and clear. Tala knelt by the edge and touched the surface with her fingertips, as if greeting it. Then she looked around at the wide land. You live in a good place, she said quietly. The wind speaks clearly here. Luke watched her, curious. What does it say today? Tala closed her eyes for a moment. It says you are a man who carries many thoughts, but speaks few of them. He couldn't help but laugh softly. That's not far from the truth. But her words touched him. He wasn't used to anyone seeing so deeply into him. Most people only saw a quiet cowboy who worked hard and kept to himself. Tala saw more. They sat by the stream for a while, Tala drawing shapes in the sand with a small stick patterns that looked like symbols or stories from her tribe. Luke watched in quiet fascination. When the wind grew cooler, they walked back. The sky was turning golden when they reached the cabin. Luke began sorting tools in the front yard while Tala sat on a log, weaving a small bracelet from dried grass fibers. Her fingers moved with quiet skill, twisting and tightening each piece with care. After a long moment, she spoke without looking up. You still do not understand why I am here. Luke paused, holding a rope in his hand. I'm trying, he said honestly. But I don't want you to feel like you owe me something. I helped your mother because it was right. Tala lifted her eyes to his, calm and steady. You believe this is about debt. It is not. Then what is it about? She held his gaze for a long moment, then looked at the sky, as if choosing her words carefully. When someone saves a life in our way of thinking, she explained, a bond is created. Not a chain, a bond. It means two lives have crossed for a reason. My mother believes that reason is not accident. Luke felt his chest tighten slightly. He didn't know what to say. Tala continued, her voice soft but clear. My mother told me I should come to you, because she felt something when she looked into your face. She said your heart was open, even if you didn't know it. Luke looked at her with gentle confusion. Tala, your life is your own. I don't want you giving it away because of some old tradition. She shook her head firmly. I am not giving anything away. I am choosing where my path goes. Her certainty was quiet, but unshakable. Luke felt warmth spread in his chest, part admiration, part confusion, part something he couldn't name yet. The next few days followed a steady pattern. Tala helped him with chores, asked questions about ranch life, and told him small pieces of stories from her people. She was patient, strong, and thoughtful. Luke began to look forward to her company not because he expected it but because it felt natural. She helped him gather wood. She walked beside him when he checked the cattle. She listened when he talked about the land or the storms he had lived through. And she taught him small things: how to read the shift of wind, how to see animal tracks hidden beneath leaves, how to sense a gathering storm before the clouds even formed. One evening, as the sky darkened and the crickets began to sing, Luke sat outside polishing a saddle. Tala joined him, sitting on the porch with her knees drawn up and her hands resting in her lap. Why don't you ask me about my mother's words? She asked gently. Luke paused. Because I'm afraid. I won't understand. Tala smiled a little. Understanding comes slowly. He nodded, unsure if he wanted the answer or feared it. She continued, her voice soft like a whisper carried on the wind. She said, The man who saved me carries a lonely fire. Go to him. Stand with him. And in time, he will understand that you are meant to be part of his world. Luke swallowed. Something about those words went straight to his heart. He had lived alone for years, and yet this young woman, sitting beside him, made the world feel less empty. Tala, he said quietly, I don't want you staying because your mother sent you. She turned her face toward him, her expression gentle but firm. I stayed because I felt the truth of her words. I stayed because when I look at you, I do not see danger. I see a home for my spirit. I negative. I see a home. Luke felt something shift inside him, a crack in the walls he had built around his heart. But before he could speak, Tala added something that made his breath catch. I did not come to be claimed, she said softly. I came to claim. Her words echoed between them, warm and steady, like a promise spoken in a language deeper than words. Luke looked away for a moment, trying to steady his thoughts. Tala's feelings were sincere, but he didn't want her caught between two worlds, hers and his. People around here won't understand, he warned gently. Some already don't. Tala did not flinch. I did not come for them. Her calm courage touched him deeply. Luke realized something then: this woman was not fragile, not confused, not bound by fear. She was strong, in a way that came from knowing exactly who she was. As she sat there beside him, with the desert night settling around them, Luke felt something new growing quietly between them. A trust that had formed faster than he expected, yet felt as natural as breathing. He still didn't fully understand her mother's words. He still didn't know where this path was leading. But he knew one thing: Tala wasn't leaving, and he wasn't sure he wanted her to. Days passed, and Tala's presence became a gentle rhythm in Luke's quiet world. Before she arrived, his life had been predictable: wake up at dawn, work the land, ride long distances, eat alone, sleep alone. But now, every day felt slightly different, as if the land itself had opened a new path under his boots. Tala never acted like she was unsure of her place. She carried herself with quiet confidence, moving around the ranch as though she had lived there for years. She gathered herbs from the land, tended the fire, and helped Luke with chores in a natural way that didn't feel forced. It was as if she brought a soft light with her wherever she went. But not everyone around welcomed that light. One afternoon, when Luke rode into town for supplies, he noticed people staring at him more than usual. He tried to ignore it, but two men near the saloon stepped into his path. One of them, a rancher named Cole, crossed his arms. Heard you've got company on your land, he said with a smirk. Luke felt his jaw tighten. Not that it's your business. Cole didn't stop. An Apache woman, they say. People are talking. Luke kept his face calm. Let them talk. Cole stepped closer, lowering his voice. Those people don't belong here, Luke. You're asking for trouble. Luke's eyes hardened. If helping someone brings trouble, I'll handle it. Cole frowned, not expecting such a steady answer. Just think about what you're doing. Luke didn't bother replying. He walked past them, bought his supplies, and rode home faster than usual. He didn't want Tala to hear any of that talk. He wanted her to feel safe. When he reached the cabin, he found Tala sitting outside, weaving a small necklace made of smooth stones and grass fiber. She looked up when she heard the horse, a warm smile touching her lips. You came back early, she said. Luke tried to hide the tension in his face. Just wanted to get home. Tala watched him quietly, as if she could see straight through to the thoughts he tried to hide. Someone troubled you, she said softly. Luke looked surprised. How did you know? She touched her chest lightly. I feel your spirit. It carries weight today. Her words were simple, but they touched something deep inside him. He sat beside her, and for a long moment they just watched the sky together. Finally, Luke said, Some people in town, they don't understand. They don't like the idea of you being here. Tala listened with calm eyes, not fear. I know. Her voice didn't shake. My people have lived with such feelings for a long time. Luke felt his heart twist. He hated the idea of her being judged or mistreated because she chose to stand with him. I don't want anyone to hurt you, he said gently. Tala reached out and placed her hand lightly over his. I am not afraid. Luke. He looked at their hands, then at her. She shook her head. Fear does not guide my path. Her gaze was steady, almost glowing with calm strength. I came here because something inside me said this was where I should be. And I will not run, because others do not understand. Luke felt warmth spread slowly through his chest. Tala wasn't fragile. She wasn't lost. She was choosing this place, choosing him. That evening, they prepared supper together. Luke cut vegetables while Tala cooked them with herbs she had gathered. The scent filled the cabin with a warm, calming smell. And for a moment, Luke forgot all the noise from town. After they ate, they sat by the fire. Tala held the small necklace she had woven earlier and gently placed it in Luke's hands. For you, she said softly. He ran his fingers over the smooth stones. It's beautiful. She nodded. The stones came from the stream behind your land. They belong here, and so do I. Her words settled into his heart like a quiet truth. As the fire crackled softly, Tala finally spoke about her mother's message, something Luke had been afraid to ask directly. The words, she whispered to you. Tala said. They were not a command. They were a blessing. Luke turned toward her, listening carefully. She said, Now I'm yours. But the meaning is different in our way of speaking. It means a bond, not ownership. It means trust. It means you touched her life in a way she cannot forget. Luke let out a slow breath, relieved but overwhelmed by the depth of it. Tala continued gently. When she said, I must come to you, she meant I should see with my own eyes the man who saved her. She believed our paths were meant to meet. Luke looked into Tala's eyes and saw something soft, something warm, something that felt like the beginning of a promise. But what do you believe? He asked quietly. Tala held his gaze without fear. I believe she was right. Before Luke could say anything more, the soft peace of the moment was broken by distant hoofbeats. Loud. Fast. Too many. Luke stood up quickly. Tala rose beside him, calm but alert. 3 riders burst into the yard, men from town. Cole was among them. Their faces were stiff with anger and fear they didn't even understand. Cole pointed at Tala. We won't stand by while she stays here. It's dangerous, Luke. Luke stepped forward, standing between them and Tala. She is not a threat. She's under my protection. Cole shook his head. You can't protect her from all of us. Luke's voice dropped low, steady as iron. I can try. The men dismounted, their boots thudding on the dusty ground. Luke didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't want violence. He just stood tall, his shoulders square, his expression firm. Tala stepped up beside him, placing her hand lightly on his arm, not to hide behind him, but to stand with him. Her calm presence seemed to confuse the men. She didn't look afraid. She didn't shout. She didn't run. She simply stood there, steady as stone. Luke's voice echoed through the yard. She stays. If you want to fight, it'll be with me. Cole stared at him for a long moment. Then something shifted in his eyes, a realization. Maybe respect. Maybe shame. He spat on the ground, shook his head, and got back on his horse. This is on you, Luke, he said. But don't expect us to lift a finger when trouble comes. The men rode off, leaving dust behind. Luke let out a long breath. His whole body felt tense. Tala touched his arm gently. You stood for me, she said softly. I'd do it again, Luke replied, without hesitation. Tala's eyes softened with emotion, deep, warm, grateful. As dusk settled, Luke and Tala sat quietly on the porch. The danger had passed for now, but something in the air felt changed, stronger, clearer. The bond between them was no longer quiet or uncertain. It was real. After a long silence, Luke finally spoke the question that had been buried in his heart since the day she arrived. Tala, he said softly, when you told me you're here by choice, What does that mean for us? Tala looked at him gently. Then she reached out, taking his hand between hers with soft certainty. It means what my mother saw is true, she said. It means I choose to walk beside you. Not from debt, not from duty, from my heart. Luke felt a warmth rise through him, slow and deep. The world seemed to quiet around them, leaving only the sound of the wind and the soft beat of his own heartbeat. Tala, he whispered, I don't want you staying because you feel tied to me. She shook her head gently. I stay because I want to. I stay because when I look at you, I feel safe. I feel peace. I feel home. Luke's breath caught. No one had ever said something like that to him. Tala's voice softened even more. So now, I say the words again not as a promise from my mother, but as my own truth. She leaned closer, her eyes warm and steady. Now I'm yours. The words didn't mean ownership. They meant belonging, partnership, trust. A bond formed freely and deeply. Luke squeezed her hand gently. And I'm yours, he whispered back. The night settled around them like a blanket, quiet and peaceful. The fire inside the cabin glowed softly. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Tala rested her head lightly on Luke's shoulder, and he let out a slow breath. A breath of acceptance, peace, and a new beginning. Two different worlds had met by accident, but they stayed together by choice, and that choice became the foundation of their future.